Something just broke in the global supply chain, and nobody's talking about it. Not Bitcoin, not AI chips, not interest rates. I'm talking about silver. But here's the thing, this isn't about price predictions. This is about something far more dangerous, a 50-year-old system that's running out of physical metal to back its promises. And when I show you the numbers in the next 15 minutes, you'll understand why some of the world's largest institutions are quietly moving mountains to lock this down. Let me start with what everyone's missing. Every analyst is obsessed with solar panel demand, right? They're saying, oh, the solar industry is booming, silver consumption will go up, prices will follow. That's backwards. Here's what they're not telling you. The industry just changed the game completely. They switched from P-type solar cells to something called N-type cells, specifically TOPCon and HJT technology. Now, I know that sounds boring. It's not. A standard PERC solar cell uses one amount of silver. A TOPCon cell, it needs 50 to 80% more silver just to function. Think about that. The same solar panel, but suddenly it's demanding massive amounts more of the same metal that's already becoming scarce. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The Silver Institute, they've been tracking supply and demand for decades. Their old models, they completely missed this technological shift. They underestimated the velocity of change. See, everybody assumed that as technology got more efficient, silver usage would go down. That's the normal narrative, right? But physics has a different opinion. The N-type technology has hit something called the Thrifting Limit. Basically, you physically cannot reduce silver usage below a certain point without the solar cell failing. You've maxed out efficiency. The metal is now mandatory. This isn't elastic demand. You can't swap it out. You can't find a substitute. This is inelastic demand meeting a shrinking supply. And that's where the danger starts. The geopolitical layer, because this is where it gets real. China, India, Russia, the BRICS nations, they're not just talking about ditching the dollar. That's the distraction. The real game is far more physical. They're playing an arbitrage that's literally draining the West. Shanghai has their own precious metals exchange, the SGE. London has LBMA. New York has COMEX. And there's a price gap between them, a growing gap. Shanghai is paying more for physical silver than London. They're overpaying on purpose. Why? Because they're in a race to physically move metal, not trade it on paper, move the actual bars, the actual ounces from Western vaults to Eastern vaults. It's a siphon, and it's working. There's something called the gold to silver ratio. Historically, it hovers around 70 to 1 or 80 to 1. That's been the normal for decades. But right now, central banks around the world are hoarding gold at record levels. Turkey, Poland, Hungary, everyone. It's an arms race for physical gold. When gold gets locked down like this, silver follows, but it lags. It's like a compressed spring. The more they compress, the more violent the snapback. And we're at maximum compression right now. History shows us every single time central banks have gone into gold buying mode, silver has exploded upward, sometimes 200%, 300%, 400% in what looks like overnight. The divergence from the normal ratio, that's the warning signal. Let me hit you with the first number that should keep you awake. In the last 3 to 4 years, more than 50% of the silver held in LBMA and COMEX warehouses has disappeared. 50%. I'm not talking about sold. I'm not talking about used in industry. I'm talking about gone from the system. The drawdown velocity we're seeing, historians of commodity markets have never documented this pace before, not in 50 years of records. Think about that. Half the visible, registered, audited metal supply has evaporated in a blink. And that's just the metal they admit to tracking. The India whale. Now, here's where the math breaks completely. India just imported more silver than ever before in recorded history. We're talking 25% of global mine supply in one country in 1 year. Meanwhile, the solar industry alone is consuming 60% of annual production. So India takes 25%, industry takes 60%. That's 85% of global mine supply already allocated. What's left for the rest of the world? Europe? North America? Everyone else who needs silver for electronics, medical devices, water purification, dentistry? They're fighting for scraps. And here's the brutal part. Nobody's cutting back. Demand hasn't slowed. In fact, it's accelerated. The math is broken. Supply and demand don't balance anymore. I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, but when the price goes up, won't people recycle old silver? Isn't there a backup supply? That's the narrative they want you to believe. Here's the reality. Most silver isn't sitting in your grandmother's jewelry box. It's locked in electronics, solar panels, industrial equipment, medical devices. And when these items reach the end of life, they don't get recycled. They don't get melted down. They go to landfills. Why? Economics. It's not profitable to extract 0.001 ounces of silver from an old circuit board if labor and processing cost you $50. The metal's just abandoned. There is no backup valve. There's no recycling cavalry coming to save the day. The system has zero flexibility. This is where we move from scarcity into systemic risk. COMEX, the futures exchange where most silver is priced and supposedly backed by physical metal, keeps something called registered inventory. These are bars that can be delivered against futures contracts. It's the real stuff. Currently, that inventory is at a level that would have been considered normal 10 years ago, but it's not normal now because the claims on that metal, the open interest, the paper contracts, has exploded to levels nobody's ever seen. The ratio of paper claims to physical metal, it's dangerous. And there's a specific number everyone in the industry watches: 30 million ounces. That's the threshold. When registered inventory drops below 30 million ounces, the system enters what's called a critical stress. Let me explain why that number is a doomsday alarm. Most of the silver in COMEX warehouses right now is either leased out or encumbered. That means it's locked, it's spoken for, it can't be freely moved. The actual available metal, the metal that can actually be delivered, is a fraction of what's reported. The moment that eligible silver can't be converted into registered status because the miners, refiners, and institutions refuse to do it, that's when the system breaks. That's when you get a thing called force majeure. That's the fancy term for we can't deliver. The contract is void. And when that happens, you don't just get higher prices, you get a liquidity event, a shock to the entire financial system. Because every bank, every hedge fund, every major player has shorted this market, betting that supply will always show up. When it doesn't, panic. Here's what most people miss about what China, India, and Russia are doing. They're not trying to crash the Western financial system, at least not directly. They're playing a longer game. They're physically securing the commodity that will matter when currency games end. Think about it. If you're building an alternative currency system, what do you back it with? Gold and silver, physical stuff. The countries doing this right now are accumulating at record rates. They know something's coming. And the West? We're sitting here debating whether silver is an investment or a commodity. Meanwhile, the infrastructure for holding, vaulting, and trading physical silver in Shanghai is expanding. Indian demand is institutional, not retail. Russian reserves are being replenished. The physical is being relocated. The West is losing control of its own metal. And when people figure that out, when retail investors realize the vault's been emptied, that's when things move fast. I want to give you perspective here. In 1968, the London silver fix collapsed. The system ran out of physical metal. They literally couldn't deliver against futures contracts. Prices exploded. The entire contract was restructured. In 1980, Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market. They accumulated physical silver. The exchange raised margin requirements and circuit breaker rules to stop it. But for a moment, just a moment, the system was vulnerable. Both times, when physical scarcity met massive paper claims, things got ugly fast. We're setting up the same scenario, but this time it's not a single buyer or a conspiracy, it's structural. Industrial demand, central bank demand, geopolitical repositioning, technology shift, all happening at once. Here's what changed in the last 18 months. The conversation shifted. Mainstream analysts started acknowledging what was previously dismissed as conspiracy. Major institutions started filing patents for alternative materials to reduce silver usage. Why? Because they're preparing for a world where silver isn't available. India doubled down on imports. China opened new vaults. And the COMEX registered inventory? It dropped another 8 million ounces just last quarter. The spring is compressing faster. The timeline people thought was 5 to 10 years away. It's collapsing into 18 to 24 months.